They say the only thing colder than a Chicago winter is the heart of Vincenzo Moretti. He ran the city's underworld with silence and steel, a man who never let emotions dictate a business deal, and never ever answered unknown numbers during a sit-down. But at 2:00 a.m. on a Tuesday, a vibrating phone on a mahogany table changed history. He was seconds away from hanging up. He was seconds away from ending the call that would have saved his soul. He didn't answer for the woman begging on the other end. He answered because in the background he heard a sound that stopped his heart, a 3-year-old boy crying out for a father he had never met. This is the story of how the devil found his redemption. The VIP room of the Obsidian. Chicago's most exclusive underground lounge smelled of aged leather, Cuban tobacco, and imminent violence. Vincenzo Enzo Moretti sat at the head of the table, his posture relaxed but his eyes alert. He was 34, wearing a tailored charcoal Brioni suit that cost more than the average American made in a year. Across from him sat the heads of the Irish syndicate, the O'Malleys. The air was thick enough to choke on. The negotiation was over territory, near the shipping yards, and it wasn't going well. "We want 10% of the container traffic, Enzo," Liam O'Malley spat, leaning forward. "Or the trucks stop moving." Enzo didn't blink. He swirled the amber liquid in his glass. "You'll get 5, and you'll thank me for not burying you under the Kennedy Expressway." The tension spiked. Hands drifted toward suit jackets where holsters were concealed. This was the life Enzo had chosen, or rather the life that had chosen him. He was the capo of the Moretti crime family. He didn't have luxuries like fear or hesitation. That was when his personal phone buzzed. It sat face down on the glass table. Enzo ignored it. Only 3 people had this number: his consigliere, his head of security, and his mother. 2 of them were in the room, and his mother was asleep in Palermo. It buzzed again. Long. Persistent. Liam O'Malley smirked. "Trouble at home, Moretti?" "Maybe the girlfriend is lonely." Enzo's eyes narrowed. He hated interruptions. He hated disrespect even more. He reached out with a manicured hand and silenced the call, flipping the phone over. "Unknown caller." 5%. Enzo repeated, his voice dropping an octave. "Take it and leave." The phone lit up again. The vibration rattled against the glass, an irritating, jagged sound that cut through the silence of the room. Enzo's jaw clenched. This was a breach of protocol. Whoever was calling was either dying or had a death wish. He snatched the phone up, intending to crush the device or scream at the person on the other line. He slid his thumb across the screen and brought it to his ear. "Who is this?" Enzo demanded, his voice like grinding gravel. Silence. "I said." Enzo threatened, his finger hovering over the end call button. "Who is this?" "You have 5 seconds before I trace this line, and—" Then he heard it. It wasn't a voice. It was a sound that bypassed his brain and went straight to his gut. A jagged, terrified intake of breath. The sound of someone trying not to scream. "Enzo." The voice was a whisper, trembling so hard it barely formed a word. Enzo froze. The room, the O'Malleys, the smoke, it all vanished. He knew that voice. It had been 4 years, but he knew it. "Olivia," he whispered. Olivia Jenkins, the waitress, the one mistake he had allowed himself. The one night of normalcy at a diner off Route 66 when he was lying low from a RICO investigation. She was sunshine and cheap coffee. He was darkness and danger. He had left her a stack of cash and a fake number, thinking he was protecting her. "I didn't know who else to call," she sobbed, the sound muffled as if she was hiding in a closet. "They're outside, Enzo. They're kicking the door." Enzo stood up. The chair scraped violently against the floor. The O'Malleys jumped, drawing their weapons, thinking the meeting had turned into a hit. Enzo didn't even look at them. "Who is outside, Olivia?" "Where are you?" "I don't know," she cried. "Men. They said they want the money my brother owes, but I don't have it. I told them I don't have it." Thud, thud. Enzo could hear the wood splintering through the phone line. "Rocco," Enzo barked at his head of security. "Trace this call. Now." "Enzo, please," Olivia begged. "I'm scared. I hid him, but if they find us—" Enzo felt the blood drain from his face. "Hid who, Olivia, hid? Who?" On the other end of the line, the background noise shifted. The door gave way with a sickening crash. Glass shattered. Heavy boots stomped on floorboards. And then the sound that changed Vincenzo Moretti's life forever. A high-pitched, terrifying wail pierced the static. "Mommy! Mommy!" It was a boy, a toddler. Enzo stood paralyzed. The math hit him like a physical blow. 4 years ago, a one-night stand. A boy who sounded exactly like the terrifying vulnerability Enzo had buried deep inside himself. "Get away from him!" Olivia screamed on the line. There was a scuffle. The phone clattered to the floor, but the line stayed open. "Well, well," a gritty, unfamiliar voice sneered through the speaker. "Look at this little guy. Got your eyes, sweetheart." "Don't touch him," Olivia shrieked. Enzo gripped the phone so hard, the screen cracked under his thumb. He turned to the O'Malleys, his eyes burning with a demoniac fury that made the hardened Irish gangsters step back. "Meeting over," Enzo growled. He looked at Rocco, who was holding a tablet, his face pale. "I have the location, boss. North side. Tenement building on Wacker. 17 minutes out." "We make it in 10, Enzo said, walking toward the exit. "Kill anyone who gets in my way." The convoy of 3 black armored SUVs tore down Michigan Avenue like a black tear running down the face of the city. Rain had turned to sleet lashing against the windshields, but Enzo didn't feel the cold. He felt a fire in his chest that was consuming him alive. He sat in the back of the lead vehicle, the phone still pressed to his ear on speaker. The line was chaotic. He could hear Olivia begging. He could hear the heavy thuds of furniture being overturned. He could hear the boy, his son, crying in a way that made Enzo want to burn the entire world to ash. "Rocco, give me the name on the building," Enzo ordered, loading a fresh magazine into his custom Sig Sauer P226. "Building is owned by a shell company, but the turf belongs to the 12th Street Kings, low-level pushers, loan sharks," Rocco said from the front seat, steering the massive SUV through a red light, forcing a taxi to swerve into a hydrant. "Amateurs," Enzo spat. "Who is the brother?" "Olivia's brother is Mikey Jenkins. Gambling addict, owes 40 grand to a guy named Mick the Hammer Swanson. Real piece of work. Likes to hurt women to collect debts." Enzo stared out the window at the blurring city lights. 40 grand. He had tipped waiters more than that for a good wedding reception. Olivia was about to die, and his son was about to be orphaned. Over 40 grand. "Drive faster," Enzo said quietly. On the phone, the situation was deteriorating. "Please," Olivia's voice came through, choked with tears. "Take the TV, take my tips. Just let us go." "The TV." "The man." Mick laughed. It was a wet, ugly sound. "Mikey owes Big Sweetheart, and since Mikey skipped town, you're the payment. And the kid? Maybe we sell him to a nice family upstate." Fetch a good price for a white kid with blue eyes. Enzo's vision went red. He pressed the button on the intercom, connecting him to the other two SUVs. No survivors, he said. Do you hear me? You leave the girl and the boy. Everyone else dies. Copy that, boss. The convoy screeched to a halt in front of a dilapidated brick apartment complex on the north side. The street lights were broken. Graffiti covered the walls. It was a place where hope went to die. Enzo didn't wait for Rocco to open the door. He kicked it open and stepped out into the freezing sleet. His Italian leather shoes splashed into a puddle of oil and mud. He didn't care. He raised his gun. "Fourth floor!" Rocco shouted, pointing to a shattered window. Enzo moved with the lethal grace of a predator. He didn't run. He flowed. He took the stairs 3 at a time, his security team flanking him like a phalanx of Spartans. They passed terrified neighbors peeking out of chained doors. They ignored them. They reached apartment 4B. The door was hanging off its hinges. Enzo didn't announce himself. He didn't bargain. He stepped into the doorway, his silhouette framed by the dim hallway light. The scene inside was a nightmare. The apartment was tiny, cluttered with toys and cheap furniture. Olivia was on her knees, her waitress uniform torn at the shoulder, clutching a small boy to her chest. A large man with a shaved head and a neck tattoo, Mick, was standing over them, holding a baseball bat. 2 other thugs were ransacking the kitchen. Mick turned, hearing the footsteps. He squinted at Enzo. He didn't recognize the suit. He didn't recognize the face. He just saw a man in a doorway. "Who the hell are you?" Mick sneered, raising the bat. "Get lost, pretty boy. This is private." Enzo looked at Olivia. Her eyes were filled with terror and confusion. Then he looked at the boy. The boy had curly, dark hair, just like Enzo's mother. And he had eyes that were a piercing, icy blue. "My eyes." Enzo looked back at Mick. "You woke him up," Enzo said calmly. "What?" Mick asked, confused. "My son," Enzo said, raising the Sig Sauer. "You made him cry." Before Mick could process the words, Enzo pulled the trigger. Pop! The bullet took Mick in the center of the forehead. He dropped like a stone, the bat clattering loudly against the floor. Chaos erupted. The 2 thugs in the kitchen scrambled for their waistbands, but Rocco and the security team were already in the room. Suppressed gunfire coughed, thwip, thwip, thwip. In 3 seconds, the room was silent again, save for the smell of cordite and the sound of the wind whistling through the broken door. 3 bodies lay on the floor. Enzo holstered his weapon. He stepped over Mick's body, his expensive shoes crunching on broken glass. He knelt down in front of Olivia. She was trembling violently, shielding the boy's eyes with her hand. She looked up at Enzo, fear warring with relief. She looked older than he remembered, tired, worn down by a life he had escaped. But she was still beautiful. "Enzo," she breathed. "I'm here," he said softly. He reached out, hesitating for a moment before placing his hand on the boy's back. The child flinched, then peeked through his mother's fingers. Those blue eyes stared right into Enzo's soul. "Who are you?" the boy squeaked. Enzo felt a lump form in his throat, a sensation he hadn't felt since his father died. He looked at Olivia, silently asking permission. She slowly lowered her hand, nodding with tears streaming down her face. Enzo wiped a smudge of dirt from the boy's cheek with his thumb. "I'm your father, Leo." Enzo said the word, feeling strange and heavy on his tongue. "And I'm going to make sure no one ever makes you cry again." Rocco stepped forward, looking at the bodies. "Boss, the cops will be here in 5 minutes. Shots fired calls usually take 10 in this neighborhood, but we shouldn't linger. Enzo stood up, extending a hand to Olivia. Can you walk? I think so, she stammered. But my things, my job. You don't have a job anymore, Olivia, Enzo said, pulling her gently to her feet. He took off his suit jacket worth $5,000 and wrapped it around her shivering shoulders. He then picked up Leo, who instinctively wrapped his small legs around Enzo's waist, burying his face in the silk shirt. Enzo held him tight. It felt like holding a live grenade that he never wanted to let go of. Where are we going? Olivia asked, looking around at the carnage, then at the man she hadn't seen in 4 years. Enzo walked toward the door, shielding Leo's head with his hand. Home, Enzo said. We're going home. The silence inside the armored SUV was heavier than the steel plating that lined its doors. Outside Chicago was a blur of sleet and neon, a city that never slept but always looked away when necessary. Inside, the only sound was the hum of the climate control and the soft, rhythmic breathing of Leo, who had passed out from exhaustion against Enzo's chest. Olivia sat on the opposite bench seat, pressed against the leather door. She still had Enzo's suit jacket draped over her shoulders. It smelled of sandalwood gunpowder and a cologne so expensive it made her head spin. She stared at the man, holding her son. Vincenzo Moretti. 4 years ago, he had been Enzo, a quiet, brooding man in a leather jacket who tipped with $100 bills and listened to her talk about her dreams of opening a bakery. He had been a mystery, a dangerous thrill. Now, seeing him in this car flanked by men with earpieces and concealed weapons, the mystery was gone. The reality was terrifying. She watched his hand, the same hand that had just ended a man's life, without a tremor, gently stroking Leo's back. His thumb moved in slow, hypnotic circles. He wasn't looking at Olivia. He was looking at this boy's sleeping face with an intensity that bordered on religious devotion. "He needs a doctor," Olivia whispered. Her voice sounded jagged, broken by the screaming she had done earlier. Enzo didn't look up. "Dr. Aris is waiting at the estate. He's the best pediatrician in the state. He usually treats senators' kids." "The estate?" Olivia repeated the words, tasting like ash. "Enzo, you can't just take us. That was kidnapping. What you did back there, that was murder." Finally, Enzo lifted his eyes. In the dim light of the passing street lamps, his irises were like shattered ice. "That wasn't murder, Olivia. That was pest control," he said, his voice devoid of regret. "And as for kidnapping, I'm saving you. If I leave you in that apartment, or even at a hotel, Mick's crew will come back, not to collect the money, but to send a message. They don't leave witnesses." Olivia hugged herself, pulling his jacket tighter. She knew he was right, and that terrified her more than the gun. "My brother, Mikey, he didn't know they would come for us." "Your brother is a junkie and a coward," Enzo said coldly. "He traded your safety for a week of high. If I find him before the wolves do, consider it a miracle." The car began to slow. They had left the city grid and were winding up a private road along the North Shore where the trees were old and the gates were high. "Where are we?" Olivia asked, wiping a smudge of dirt from her cheek. "My home," Enzo said. The vehicle turned through massive wrought-iron gates that swung open automatically. They drove up a long, winding driveway, lined with statues and manicured hedges that looked black in the night. At the end of the drive stood a mansion that looked more like a fortress. It was built of grey stone, imposing and cold, with security cameras blinking red from every cornice. The SUV stopped. Rocco opened the door, holding a large black umbrella against the sleet. "I'll take him," Olivia said, reaching for Leo. Her maternal instinct screamed at her, to get her son away from this man, away from the blood she knew was on his hands. Enzo pulled back slightly. His grip on the boy tightened. For a second, a dark possessiveness flashed in his eyes. He didn't want to let go. He had just found the one thing in the world that was purely his, and his instinct was to hoard it. "He's heavy," Enzo said, his voice tight. "He's my son." Olivia countered, her voice trembling but firm. She held his gaze. "Give him to me, Enzo." A silent war passed between them. Rocco looked away, uncomfortable. Finally, Enzo exhaled a sharp hiss of air through his nose. He gently transferred the sleeping weight of the toddler into Olivia's arms. The transfer was awkward. Their hands brushed. His skin was burning hot. Hers was freezing. A spark of electricity, the same one that had drawn them together 4 years ago, zipped through them. Enzo pulled his hand back as if burned. "Inside," he ordered, stepping out into the rain. "Mrs. Gable is waiting." They walked into a foyer that was larger than Olivia's entire apartment building. The floor was checkered marble, black and white, polished to a mirror shine. A massive crystal chandelier hung overhead, though it was dimmed to a low golden glow. Standing by the grand staircase was a woman in her 60s, wearing a severe black dress and a white apron. Her hair was pulled back into a tight bun, her face a map of stern lines. This was Mrs. Gable, the housekeeper who had raised Enzo when his own mother couldn't. "Enzo!" Mrs. Gable said, her eyes darting to the blood speckled on his white dress shirt. She didn't flinch. She was used to this. Then her eyes moved to Olivia, and finally to the boy in her arms. Her expression softened just a fraction. The shock was evident. She saw the resemblance immediately. The Moretti curl. The brow. "Is this—" Mrs. Gable started, her voice losing its professional edge. "Get a room ready in the East Wing. The nursery suite," Enzo commanded, checking his watch. "And tell Dr. Aris to come up immediately. I want him checked for bruises, dehydration, everything." "The East Wing is dusty, sir. It hasn't been used since—" Mrs. Gable hesitated. "Then clean it," Enzo snapped. He turned to Olivia. "Go with her. Give her the boy. You need a bath and clean her clothes. You smell like that tenement." It was a cruel thing to say, but Enzo used cruelty like a shield. If he was soft, he couldn't think. And he needed to think. Olivia looked at him, hurt, flashing in her eyes. "I'm not leaving him alone." "He will be 10 feet away from you," Enzo said, turning his back on them to walk toward his study. "Rocco with me. We have a war to plan." Olivia stood there, shivering in the marble hall, clutching her sleeping son, realizing she had traded a cage of poverty for a cage of gold. And the owner of the cage was a man she still, God help her, loved. The bathwater was hot, infused with lavender and eucalyptus salts that Mrs. Gable had insisted would soothe the nerves. The bathroom itself was a masterpiece of Italian design. White marble, gold fixtures and towels, so thick they felt like blankets. Olivia sat on the edge of the massive tub, wrapped in a plush white robe. She hadn't gotten in the water yet. She was just staring at the steam rising her hands, shaking uncontrollably in her lap. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind a hollow, aching exhaustion. Next door, through the connecting door, which she had insisted remain wide open, Leo was sleeping in a crib that looked like an antique. Dr. Aris, a kind elderly man with cold hands, had examined him. "He's fine," the doctor had said. "Just tired and malnourished. A few days of good food and rest." Olivia looked at her hands. They were scrubbed clean, but she could still feel the phantom grease of the diner, the grime of the apartment, the terror of Mick's hand grabbing her arm. She stood up and walked to the mirror. The face staring back was pale. Dark circles bruised the skin under her eyes. She looked 5 years older than 26. "What have you done, Olivia?" she whispered to her reflection. She had called the devil to save her from demons, and the devil had answered. Downstairs, the atmosphere was entirely different. Enzo was in his study, a room lined with mahogany bookshelves, filled with law books and military history. A fire crackled in the hearth, but it offered no warmth to the men in the room. Enzo stood behind his desk, pouring a glass of scotch. He didn't offer any to Rocco or his consigliere Silas. Silas was a thin man, with glasses, who looked more like an accountant than a mobster. He was typing furiously on a tablet. "The police report is already filed," Silas said, not looking up. "A gang-related dispute in a known drug den. No witnesses. The 12th Street Kings are claiming it was a rival crew. We're clear on the legal front." "And the Kings?" Enzo asked, taking a sip. The alcohol burned, grounding him. "They're confused," Rocco grunted from the corner. "They don't know who hit them. Mick was a low-level earner, but he kicked up to the bosses. They'll be asking questions." "Let them ask," Enzo said. He walked to the window, looking out at the dark grounds. "If they ask too loud, cut their tongues out." "Enzo," Silas said, stopping his typing. He took off his glasses. "We have a bigger problem than the Kings. You brought a civilian into the house, and a child who looks exactly like you." Enzo turned his face a mask of stone. "He is my blood." "Does the family know?" Silas asked quietly. "Does your uncle know?" "No one knows," Enzo said dangerously. "And if anyone finds out before I tell them, I will skin the leak alive." Silas nodded slowly. "A son changes things, Enzo. It makes you vulnerable. It makes you a target. The O'Malleys, the Russians. If they know there is an heir, they won't go for you anymore. They'll go for the boy." Enzo's glass shattered in his hand. Shards of crystal fell to the carpet. Whiskey dripped from his clenched fist, mixing with a drop of blood from his palm. He didn't feel the cut. The image Silas had painted someone touching Leo sent a black rage coursing through his veins. "Then we lock this city down," Enzo whispered. "Double the guard rotation. I want a team on the perimeter 24/7. Background checks on all staff again. No one comes in or out without my approval." "And the girl?" Rocco asked. Enzo paused. He looked at the whiskey seeping into the Persian rug. "Olivia." "She stays," Enzo said. "She's a loose end," Silas warned. "She is the mother of my son," Enzo snapped. "And she is mine." He hadn't meant to say the last word. It slipped out a confession of the truth he had been denying for 4 years. He hadn't left her because he was bored. He had left her because he knew that being with him was a death sentence. But he had checked on her. He had watchers track her for the first year, until the war with the triads got too hot, and he had to pull everyone back. He thought she would move on. Find a nice accountant. Be happy. He never imagined she was struggling in a tenement, raising his son on tip money. The guilt was a physical weight in his chest. "Clean this up," Enzo said, gesturing to the glass. "I'm going upstairs." Enzo walked up the grand staircase, his footsteps heavy. The house was quiet. Now, he reached the east wing and saw the door to the guest suite slightly ajar. He pushed it open, silently. The room was dim, lit only by the hallway light. Olivia was asleep. She hadn't gotten into the bed. She was curled up in a velvet armchair next to the crib, still wearing the bathrobe, her head resting on her knees. She looked small, defeatable. Enzo walked into the room. He moved to the crib. Leo was sleeping on his back, his arms thrown out wide. He looked peaceful, safe. Enzo reached out, hovering his hand over the boy's chest, feeling the warmth of his life. My son. It was terrifying. He was a man who dealt in death, and here lay a life he was responsible for. He turned his attention to Olivia. Her breathing was shallow. He knelt down beside the chair. Up close, he could see the dark circles, the roughness of her hands. Hands that had scrubbed tables and counted change while he was buying politicians and ordering hits. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair away from her face. Olivia flinched. Her eyes flew open wide with panic. She gasped, pulling back into the chair, her legs kicking out instinctively. "It's me," Enzo whispered, holding his hands up. "It's just me." Olivia's chest heaved. It took her a moment to recognize him in the dark. The fear in her eyes slowly morphed into wariness. "You're bleeding," she whispered, looking at his hand, where the glass had cut him. Enzo looked at his hand. "It's nothing." "Why are you here?" she asked, pulling her robe tighter. "Did you come to tell me the price?" "The price." Enzo frowned. "Nothing is free, Enzo." "I know that art now," she said bitterly. "You saved us. You brought us to a castle. What do you want in return?" "You want Leo." Enzo's jaw tightened. "I don't barter for my family." "Olivia." "We aren't family," she shot back, her voice rising. "We were a weekend fling. You left. You changed your number. You didn't even say goodbye." "I did it to keep you alive." Enzo hissed, his voice low but intense. He leaned in his face, inches from hers. "Do you think I wanted to leave? Do you have any idea what my life is? If I had stayed, you would have been a target 4 years ago. I left to let you have a normal life." "A normal life?" Olivia let out a broken, incredulous laugh. Tears spilled over. "I was pregnant, Enzo. I was alone. I had to drop out of culinary school. I worked double shifts until my feet bled, just to buy diapers. I had to hide from my brother's loan sharks. That is the normal life you gave me." Her words hit him like bullets. Each one pierced his armor. He hadn't known. He had assumed she was better off without him. He looked at her, really looked at her. He saw the steel beneath the exhaustion. She had survived. She had protected his son when he wasn't there. Enzo reached out. Olivia flinched again, but this time he didn't stop. He took her face in his hands. His palms were rough, dangerous, but his touch was incredibly gentle. "I didn't know," he said, his voice dropping to a rumble. "I swear on my mother's grave, Olivia. I didn't know." Olivia trembled in his grasp. She wanted to push him away. She wanted to scream, but the heat of his hands, the scent of him. It woke up a part of her she thought had died in that diner 4 years ago. "You know now," she whispered. "Yes," Enzo said. He ran his thumb over her cheekbone. "And I am never leaving you again. You are staying here. Both of you." "I can't raise him in this," Olivia said, gesturing to the dark house. "I saw the guns, Enzo. I saw what you did to those men." "The world is full of wolves, Olivia," Enzo said grimly. "You can either be a sheep, or you can live with the wolf who knows how to kill them. I am offering you the pack." He stood up, towering over her, the tenderness masked by his usual mask of command. "Get some sleep. Tomorrow we have to talk about your brother. And tomorrow He looked at the crib. Tomorrow I have to learn how to be a father. He turned and walked to the door. Enzo, Olivia called out softly. He stopped his hand on the frame. Thank you, she said. It was reluctant but sincere. For coming. Enzo didn't look back. I always answer the call, Olivia. Eventually. He closed the door, leaving her in the darkness, but for the first time in 4 years, she didn't feel entirely alone. She felt something more dangerous than loneliness. She felt hope. And in Enzo Moretti's world, hope was the most dangerous thing of all. Mourning in the Moretti estate did not break. It invaded. Olivia woke to the sound of silence. In her old life, mourning was the sound of garbage trucks on Wacker Drive, the screaming of the couple next door, and the incessant beep of her alarm clock, reminding her she had a double shift at the diner. Here the silence was heavy, insulated by stone walls and velvet drapes. She sat up in the massive 4-poster bed. The sheets were Egyptian cotton cool against her skin. For a second, a fleeting, treacherous second, she felt safe. Then the memory of the previous night, the gunshots, the blood on Enzo's hand. The look in his eyes crashed back into her mind. She scrambled out of bed, her bare feet sinking into the plush carpet. She rushed to the connecting door. The nursery was empty. Panic, cold and sharp, seized her chest. "Leo!" she gasped, stumbling into the room. The antique crib was made up perfectly, as if no one had slept there. "Leo!" She ran into the hallway. It was empty, a long corridor of portraits of dead men who looked suspiciously like Enzo. She ran down the grand staircase, her breath hitching in her throat. Had he taken him? Had he sold him like that monster Mick had threatened to do? She reached the bottom of the stairs and followed the smell of coffee and pancakes. She skidded into the dining room and froze. The room was vast, dominated by a table long enough to seat 20 men. But at the very end, near the head of the table, sat a high chair. It looked brand new, expensive, and completely out of place in the dark, Gothic room. Leo was sitting in it, his face smeared with maple syrup, happily banging a silver spoon against the tray. And sitting next to him, reading a crisp copy of the Wall Street Journal, was Enzo. He was dressed for war, a navy 3-piece suit, a tie knotted with geometric precision, his hair slicked back. But his suit jacket was draped over the back of his chair, and his shirt sleeves were rolled up to his elbows, revealing the intricate tattoos that wrapped around his forearms, ink that told stories of prison and loyalty. "Eat, don't play," Enzo said, not looking up from the paper. His voice was calm, low. Leo giggled and hit the tray again. Clang. Enzo slowly lowered the paper. He looked at the boy. He didn't look annoyed. He looked fascinated. He reached out with a napkin and dabbed the syrup from Leo's chin with a gentleness that seemed impossible for a man of his size. "You have your mother's stubbornness," Enzo murmured. "Leo." Olivia breathed, her knees going weak. Enzo looked up. His eyes scanned her, instantly taking in her disheveled hair, the robe she was clutching, the fear in her stance. He stood up as she entered, a reflex of old-world manners that he couldn't suppress. "He wakes up early," Enzo said simply. "I didn't want to wake you. Mrs. Gable said you needed the rest." Olivia walked to the high chair, checking Leo instinctively. He was clean-dressed in new clothes, a soft blue sweater, and jeans that fit perfectly. "Where did these clothes come from?" she asked, her hand resting protectively on Leo's head. "I had a stylist deliver a wardrobe at 6 a.m., Enzo said, sitting back down. He picked up his espresso. The clothes he came in were insufficient. They were all I could afford, Olivia said, a spark of defensive anger rising. I'm not criticizing you, Olivia, Enzo said, his tone turning clinical. I'm stating a fact. He is a Moretti. He will not wear rags. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. A plate of fruit and pastries was already set there. Sit. Eat. I'm not hungry, she said. Sit, Enzo repeated. It wasn't a request. The temperature in the room seemed to drop a few degrees. Olivia sat. She watched him. He was eating with precision, cutting a melon slice with a silver knife that looked sharp enough to be a weapon. What happens now? Olivia asked. The police. My brother. Enzo paused. He wiped his mouth with a linen napkin. The police have ruled the incident at the tenement a gang dispute. Case closed. As for your brother. Olivia's heart stopped. Did you hurt him? Mikey. Enzo said the name like it was a disease. I had Rocco find him at a Greyhound station. He was trying to buy a ticket to St. Louis. He was running, Olivia whispered, shame coloring her cheeks. He left us. Yes, Enzo said. He did. I gave him a choice. A bullet in the knee or a plane ticket to a private rehabilitation facility in Arizona. Olivia's eyes widened. Rehab. It is a secure facility. High walls, no phones. No leaving until the doctors say he is clean, Enzo said. I paid for 6 months. If he leaves early, the deal regarding his kneecaps is back on the table. Olivia stared at him. She didn't know whether to thank him or be terrified. He had effectively kidnapped her brother and imprisoned him in a rehab center. It was an act of control absolute and terrifying. But it was also mercy. Why? She asked. Because he is your blood, Enzo said, his eyes locking onto hers. And you are the mother of my son. That makes him a liability I have to manage. I don't leave loose ends, Olivia. I fix them. He stood up, checking his platinum watch. I have to go into the city. Meetings. He walked around the table. He stopped behind her chair. She could feel the heat radiating from him. He placed a hand on the back of her chair, leaning down so his lips were close to her ear. Don't leave the grounds, he murmured. The gate is locked. The guards are armed. It is for your safety. Am I a guest or a prisoner, Enzo? She asked, trembling. You are safe, he said, evading the question. He reached out and touched Leo's head one last time. Be good, Leo. He walked out of the room. Olivia listened to the heavy click of his dress shoes on the marble, followed by the slamming of the front door. She looked at her son, who was happily chewing on a strawberry, oblivious to the fact that his father was the most dangerous man in Chicago. We have to get out of here, Leo, she whispered. But as she looked around the opulent room, at the warm food and the security, a treacherous voice in her head whispered back, Where would you go? 3 days passed. The Moretti estate was a masterpiece of landscape architecture. The back gardens were inspired by Versailles with manicured hedges, stone fountains and pathways that wound through ancient oaks. It was also a fortress. Olivia walked Leo through the garden in the late afternoon. The autumn air was crisp, blowing dead leaves across the stone path. Leo was chasing a squirrel, his laughter ringing out a sound so pure it felt alien in this place of secrets. But Olivia couldn't relax. Every 50 yards she saw them. Men in black suits, standing perfectly still in the shadows of the trees. They wore earpieces. They watched the perimeter. They watched her. She felt like a bird in a gilded cage. A very expensive, very well-guarded bird. She hadn't seen Enzo since that first breakfast. He came home late long after she had put Leo down and left before sunrise. He was a ghost in his own house, leaving only traces the scent of his cologne in the hallway, a new toy appearing in the nursery, a note left on the kitchen counter for Mrs. Gable. He is avoiding us, Olivia realized. Or he is avoiding the truth. "Mummy, look!" Leo shouted, pointing at a massive stone statue of a weeping angel. "It's beautiful, baby," she said, wrapping her cardigan tighter around herself. "It's imported from Florence, mid-19th century." The voice came from behind her. Olivia spun around, pulling Leo against her leg instinctively. An older man was standing on the path. He was leaning on a cane with a silver wolf's head handle. He wore a fedora and a long camel hair coat. His face was a map of deep wrinkles, his eyes dark and sharp, assessing her with a predator's gaze. "Who are you?" Olivia asked, her heart hammering. Where were the guards? Why hadn't they stopped him? The man smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I am family, my dear. I am Carlo, Vincenzo's uncle." Uncle Carlo. Olivia remembered Enzo mentioning him once years ago. The old guard. The man who taught me how to use a knife. I didn't know you were visiting," Olivia stammered. "I visit when I please," Carlo said, stepping closer. He looked down at Leo. The old man's expression tightened. He scrutinized the boy's face, searching for the features. "So, the rumors are true." "What rumors?" "That Vincenzo has gone soft, that he has brought a stray into the den." Carlo spat the word stray with elegant venom. "And a child." "He is not a stray," Olivia said, her voice shaking but firm. "He is Enzo's son." Carlo laughed, a dry, rasping sound. "Is he DNA can be faked? Who is to say you didn't just find a dark-haired boy to trap a rich man?" "I don't care about his money," Olivia snapped. "We didn't ask to be here." "And yet here you are," Carlo said, moving closer, invading her space. "Living in the house my brother built, eating our food, while Vincenzo is out there distracted, weak." He leaned down, his face inches from Leo. Leo shrank back, scared by the old man's intensity. "A don cannot have weaknesses," Carlo whispered to the boy. "And you, little one, are a breathless, crying weakness." "Get away from him," Olivia hissed. She grabbed Leo up into her arms. "Or what?" Carlo challenged, straightening up. "You are nobody. A waitress. You think because Vincenzo bedded you once you are a queen. In this world, women like you are disposable. Touch her, and I will remove your hand, uncle." The voice was like a whip crack, sudden and violent. Enzo was striding across the lawn from the patio doors. He had discarded his jacket. His white shirt was unbuttoned at the collar, his sleeves rolled up. He looked furious. The guards in the periphery turned away, knowing better than to witness what was about to happen. "Vincenzo," Carlo said, smoothing his coat unbothered. "I was just welcoming your guests." "You were threatening them," Enzo growled, stopping between Olivia and his uncle. He acted as a human wall shielding them. "I was testing them," Carlo corrected. "The families are talking Enzo. The Russians are smelling blood. They hear you have a child. They think you are distracted. They think the chain of command is broken. The chain of command is iron," Enzo said, his voice dropping to a deadly whisper. "And I am the one holding it." "Then prove it," Carlo said coldly. "Send them away. Hide them in Switzerland. Or better yet, cut ties. If the boy is yours, raise him as a man at a boarding school. But the woman, she is a distraction." Enzo took a step forward. He towered over the older man. "You forget your place, old man. You are an advisor, not the boss." "I'm trying to save you. You're to save your life," Carlo shouted, slamming his cane into the grass. "If the O'Malleys find out she is here, they won't just kill her. They will use her to make you kneel, and a Moretti never kneels. Enzo didn't blink. If they touch her, I will burn their entire lineage to the ground. You are thinking with your heart, not your head, Carlo sneered. That is how your father died. Enzo's hand shot out. He grabbed Carlo by the lapels of his expensive coat and shoved him backward. The old man stumbled, gasping. Get out, Enzo snarled. Get off my property. If you come near them again without my permission, family or not, I will put you in the ground next to my father. Carlo straightened his coat, his dignity bruised but his eyes burning with a warning. You are making a mistake, Vincenzo. You are choosing a girl over the family. There will be consequences. Carlo turned and limped away toward the driveway, his cane sinking into the soft earth. Silence descended on the garden. The wind rustled the dead leaves. Enzo stood with his back to Olivia, his chest heaving. His hands were clenched into fists at his sides. Olivia was trembling, clutching Leo so tight he squirmed. She had seen violence before, but this was different. This was internal. This was family turning on family. Enzo, she whispered. He turned around. The rage in his eyes was terrifying, but as soon as he saw Leo's frightened face, he squeezed his eyes shut and exhaled, forcing the demon back into its cage. Are you all right? He asked, his voice rough. He said people are talking, that we are a danger to you, Olivia said. Is it true? Are we making you weak? Enzo looked at her. He stepped closer, closing the distance between them. He reached out and placed his large hand on the back of Leo's head and his other hand on Olivia's shoulder. His grip was firm, possessive. He is wrong, Enzo said intensely. You don't make me weak, Olivia. He looked down at her lips, then up to her eyes. The air between them crackled with 4 years of suppressed longing and anger. You give me something to fight for, he said. Before this, I was just maintaining the graveyard. Now I am protecting the future. Olivia felt a tear slide down her cheek. I'm scared, Enzo. That man, he hates us. Let him hate, Enzo said, pulling her and Leo against his chest. He wrapped his arms around them, enveloping them in his heat, his scent, his strength. Let them all hate. As long as I am breathing, nothing touches you. Olivia rested her head against his chest. She could hear his heart beating steady, strong and fast. For the first time, she didn't pull away. She realized that Uncle Carlo was right about one thing. The wolves were circling. But he was wrong about the other. She wasn't just a waitress anymore. She was the thing the wolf loved. And that made her the most dangerous piece on the board. Come inside, Enzo whispered into her hair. It's getting cold. As they walked back toward the fortress of stone, the shadows in the garden seemed to lengthen, stretching out like claws reaching for their heels. The library was dark, illuminated only by the dying embers in the fireplace and the glow of a single tablet on the desk. Enzo sat with his head in his hands. The whiskey glass next to him was untouched. He heard the door creak. He didn't reach for his gun. He knew the footsteps. They were too light to be an assassin, too hesitant to be Rocco. You should be asleep, Enzo said, his voice gravelly with exhaustion. Olivia stepped into the circle of firelight. She was still wearing the clothes from the morning, her arms wrapped around herself. I couldn't sleep. Every time I close my eyes, I hear the door breaking down. Enzo stood up and walked around the desk. He leaned against the edge, crossing his ankles. That won't happen here. The walls are stone. The glass is bulletproof. Walls don't stop people like your uncle. Olivia said softly. He hates me, Enzo. He thinks I'm the crack in your armor. Carlo is old. He fears change. Enzo dismissed, though his eyes darkened. He's right, though, Olivia said, taking a step closer. The firelight danced in her eyes, turning them to liquid amber. I am a weakness. If someone puts a gun to Leo's head, you'll do whatever they say. Won't you? Enzo didn't hesitate. Yes. I would burn the city to the ground. Then we can't just hide, Olivia said. Her voice lost its tremble. A new steel entered her tone, the kind forged in poverty and desperation. If I'm going to stay, if I'm going to be the mother of a Moretti, I can't be a victim waiting to be rescued. I need to know everything. Enzo looked at her. Really looked at her. He saw the shift. The waitress was gone. The survivor remained. You want to know everything? Enzo asked quietly. Everything, she confirmed. Who sold us out? Who is coming for us? Enzo reached for a folder on his desk and slid it toward her. I didn't want you to see this tonight. Olivia opened the folder. It was a transcript of a phone call, a call made 2 days ago. The girl is a liability. If the O'Malleys take her, Vincenzo will be broken. Then, leadership changes. The caller ID was listed at the top. Carlo Moretti. Olivia gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Your own blood. He thinks I'm too young. Enzo said, his face a mask of cold fury. He thinks having a family makes me soft. He conspired with the O'Malleys to reveal your location. He wanted you taken so he could force me to step down to save you. He set us up, Olivia whispered. Anger replaced the fear. He put Leo in danger. And for that, Enzo said, pushing off the desk and standing to his full height. He will pay the ultimate price, tonight. He walked over to her. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He opened it. Inside wasn't a ring, but a small silver pendant, shaped like a shield, engraved with the Moretti crest. I can't offer you a normal life, Olivia, Enzo said, his voice thick with emotion. I can't offer you safety in the suburbs. All I can offer you is my protection, my loyalty, and my power. Where this, and every man in this city, will know that to touch you is to invite death. He took the necklace and fastened it around her neck. The cool metal rested against her collarbone. It felt like a claim. It felt like a promise. Olivia looked up at him. She didn't pull away. She placed her hand on his chest over his heart. Do what you have to do, Enzo, she whispered. Protect our son. Enzo leaned down and kissed her. It wasn't gentle. It was a seal on a pact, a kiss that tasted of whiskey, danger, and forever. The door opened. Rocco stood there, dressed in tactical gear, a grim expression on his face. Boss, Rocco said, the car is ready. We know where Carlo is meeting the Irish. Enzo pulled back from Olivia. His eyes were no longer the eyes of a father or a lover. They were the eyes of the capo. Stay with Leo, Enzo commanded. Lock the door. Come back to us, Olivia said. Enzo adjusted his cuffs, walked to the door, and paused. He looked back at her, the waitress who had become a queen in the span of 3 days. I always answer the call, he said. He walked out into the darkness to secure their future in blood. And that is where we end the first saga of Enzo and Olivia. From a forgotten phone call to a declaration of war, the waitress and the Don have finally chosen their path. Olivia has accepted the necklace, and Enzo has accepted the war. But the story isn't over. Uncle Carlo is still out there, and the O'Malleys are waiting. What do you think Enzo will do when he finds his uncle? Will he show mercy for the sake of blood? Or will he eliminate the threat to his son? And is Olivia truly ready to be a Mafia queen, or will the violence break her? If this story kept you on the edge of your seat, please destroy that. Like button, it helps the channel so much. Make sure to subscribe and hit the bell icon, so you're the first to know when Part 8 drops, because believe me, the war has only just begun. Thanks for listening, and stay safe out there.